Very well. Welcome, everybody, to today's IAJS seminar with Dr. Hallie Durchslag, titled The Brain as Transformer Station, Tuning into the Objective Psyche with a Psychotic Mind. It's an honor. It's been a joy as well, working with Hallie, preparing this seminar, and I'm sure it's going to be very, very stimulating. So let me begin by introducing Hallie, for those of you that don't know her. Hallie Durchslag, PhD, she lives in Cleveland Heights, Ohio, where she teaches, writes, and maintains a private practice as a Jungian-based psychodynamic psychotherapist. She began her career as a social worker in the arena of community development after earning a Master of Science in Social Administrations at the Mandel School of Applied Social Sciences, Case Western Reserve University. And then she shifted toward a clinical practice in 2009. She earned her doctorate in clinical psychology with emphasis in depth psychology at Pacific Graduate Institute. She has an abiding interest in the complexity of what makes us both human and transcendent beings. Her research over the past 10 years has looked at this subject through the lens of 7 mental illnesses and their physiological connection to Jungian theory. She has presented nationally and internationally on the subject, most recently with the C.G. Jung Foundation of Analytical Psychology in New York and the C.G. Jung Institute of Los Angeles. Her book, The Collective Unconscious in the Age of Neuroscience, Severe Mental Illness and Jung in the 21st Century, was recognized as a finalist in the 2022 International Association of Jungian Studies Book Awards. And she maintains her commitment to the macro side of social work as a curator of the Anima Mundi project, which looks at soul-based approaches to holistic personal development and community building. She is a past president and current honorary board member of the Jung Educational Center of Cleveland. So it's an honor having Hallie here. I'm just going to show you her book in case you haven't seen it. Here it is, The Collective Unconscious in the Age of Neuroscience, which she's going to speak about today. And I believe that Hallie is going to give a dynamic presentation, so in which we're going to be able to intervene every 15 minutes or so. So my suggestion would be, and she's going to frame it as well, is that if you have at any point a question or anything, you can either raise your hand with the raise your hand function, which is in the bottom banner. If anyone doesn't know where it's, there should be a raise hand option where it says reactions, or there should be literally a little hand to raise your hand. Or you can also write something into the chat box and we'll come to it when Hallie pauses to dialogue with us. So anyway, without further ado, Hallie, the floor is yours.
Hi, thank you. Everybody can hear me okay, I'm assuming, I hope. Do you think everybody hears me okay, Gustavo?
I think so. Yeah,
okay.
I think so. Sean is doing this. Yeah. So,
okay. So I really do want to do a call out to IAJS and this seminar series that they do. It's a lot, and Gustavo has been fabulous. And if we've got any board members on the call, you guys really, you do a lot. It's pretty thankless, I think, to be a volunteer. So the book, well, first I want to say a couple of things what we're going to be doing today. I'm going to be talking a little bit about the objective psyche, as that's kind of a core piece of what we're the pieces that we're going to put together. And then I'm going to be sharing a series of audio tapes or audio recordings. And what I want to say in advance is that they're a little bit racy. They get racier as they get going. These are actually, what I'm sharing is kind of the raw data of a psychotic experience I had, which is what I used in the context of the book. And so it's a psychotic experience. So there's cussing. There is probably well, I can tell you there's non-politically correct content. There are references, this is a really weird time to do this. There's references to Judaism and Christianity. So it's chunky. It's not, and so I want everybody to just keep a sense of that, keep a sense that this is kind of, what we're talking about is kind of an amplified or odd state of being. So that's what's going to go on with those. So I don't know, I'm guessing, not everybody's read the book, so, which is fine. But the only reason I was able to write this book is because I have bipolar disorder. And I have the type of bipolar disorder that includes psychotic episodes, and that would be bipolar 1 disorder. So it's not meant to be a memoir. What it did was give me an opportunity to look at Jungian theory in a new way. So I'm going to start sharing my screen, and this has been a little bit of my nemesis. So I ask for your patience with this. So the book, actually, I was really excited to be a finalist in the clinical category for the book awards. I think it's clinical because we use case material. I use my own case material, and as a narrative analysis, I included 3 other people to contribute for narrative analysis. One was Anton Boysen, who is, he was living in America in the 1930s. There was Morag Coate and then John Kustens. Both of them were living in Great Britain in the 1950s. All have experienced psychosis like me. It wasn't called bipolar at that time. John Kustens, it was still manic depression. Anton Boysen, probably all 3 probably manic depression versus schizophrenia, which is the other severe mental illness. But they were contributing to what narrative analysis helps with. So my goal was, because I had an experience of being on medication, being stable for about 18 years, going off my medication, which we'll talk about briefly a little bit later, becoming floridly psychotic and hospitalized, going back on my medication, moving back into the realm of the living kind of thing. And it really pushed me to think about Jungian theory, Jungian psychology in a different way. And my purpose was to build a relationship between my own neurochemical activity on one hand and psychic material affirming Jung's notion of the collective unconscious on the other. So I was trying to build relationship to medical intervention and the collective unconscious. I felt like that was a pretty important piece to connect. Now, the thing that I did in the book is I took all of our narratives and looked at them, which is what narrative analysis does. You look at it thematically, temporally, so space and time, scene, content, and meaning making. And so you're looking at everything in context of trying to find common experience and trying to find, how they amplify the similar experiences. Now, they had their books. I had to actually write my own, and this was a major step in the research, is that I spent time and basically I framed everything. So I put a temporal location on everything. I've got to move my screen just a little bit so I can see. Oh, I'm not in slideshow, that's why. Sorry about that. So what I had to do first to get a sense of what, because I was psychotic, I needed to get a sense of what I was going to be writing about. It was a stream of consciousness writing. I gathered and organized all of my emails also doctor's notes, journals, calendars. And I looked at them from this period of time when I went off of my medication, which began in April. And then I went back on medication eventually in September. And this was all in 2006. In the book, the narrative that I wrote is shared thematically only. So it's not like the content is hidden, but it's just put in according to the coding thematically. And what I want to try and share with you guys today is the actual raw data, the narrative itself that I created, to really just kind of go in there firsthand. And then we can kind of make sense together of what's going on, what the content is about, get your thoughts, and yeah, see where we get. Obviously, I'm making a connection to the objective psyche, but I want us to kind of go in real time. So let's just get a shared brief understanding about the collective unconscious as far as what I have used as a framing principle, and then the objective psyche. So just in Memories, Dreams, Reflections, Jung was just saying something alien comes to us. We don't make our dreams and we don't make our inspirations. They come, and how they arise is kind of a mystery. But we can imagine that it comes to us from mana or a daimon, a god, something around us or above us, or the unconscious, which is the term he started using for his psychology. And then Jung's priori construct of a collective unconscious, we can sit there, is this simple. He needed to figure out a place to imagine where the archetypal stuff was coming from. He had to imagine a container for these themes. It was the idea that transpersonal material could exist somewhere. It was named to note something that we could only intuit, that we could never see through form, but we could intuit it through form and content. And archetype was just the vehicle by which this material came from mana, or this place, and came to us through inspirations, dreams, etc. So this question of where it resides, how we connect to it. Originally, it was kind of imagined within the body, not really quite figured out, and very, very controversial. People were talking about, well, maybe it came in our brain, our brains contain these histories. How does transcultural myth and symbol get into our individual psyche? It's impossible. It can't possibly be through our physiology. It just doesn't have any way of being transmitted, which is not necessarily true. I mean, there's lots of psychiatrists, and especially I think Matthew Goodwin has written about this. It's not necessarily impossible. But after working with Pauly later in his career, and then after some additional work in the Aranos meetings, especially the Aranos meeting of 1951, Jung began to change the idea of where this, nebulous repository might exist. So we're going to talk about nebulous, but we're also going to be talking about my experience, space and time. So I thought I'd just give us a first glimpse of where I am in the world. This is actual. This is not, this one we can see. So I'm in Ohio. I'm in the United States. I'm in Ohio, and Cleveland is right on the water, which plays a role in some of my psychosis. This is Lake Erie, one of the 5 Great Lakes. in the United States. Now, this is Cleveland that I showed you. Here's just a couple views from the Great Lakes. So Cleveland itself is right on the coast. It's a nice town. Encourage you guys all to come visit me. But the objective psyche doesn't really exist anywhere. Now, because by the end of Jung's career, archetype became less and less situated in human story, and it moved farther and farther away from self-contained, subjectively activated patterns of behavior and outward into kind of the catalyzing effects of universal patterns on the experience, human experience. And it was during this time that Jung began exploring a psychoid archetype, or as Von Franz would call it, the same world via two different channels. In 1951, there was a really important meeting of the Eranos meetings. Some of the contributors, so Max Knoll, an electric engineer, Princeton professor, was talking about 4 types of time. So we're all talking about time now: astronomical, biological, psychological, or cosmic time. And in these particular lectures, he was interested in astrobiological time, which is the influence of planetary and universal events on human history. Now, here, I think you can see these like roots of archetypal psychology, which is expanding in the Jungian lexicon now, astrology in general, and Jung's relationship to astrology. So that has its little nuggets roots right there. And then Mircea Eliade was talking about yogic traditions and transcending time through yogic practice. And I think we can also see that in kind of the post-Jungian legacy. I mean, East and West and traditions of meditation really are a part of a lot of the work that we study. And then van der Loo was an eschatologist, sorry. He focused on myths and branches of theology that really talk about death, judgment, destiny of the soul, mankind. So these basically, you know, like Garden of Eden and mass destruction type things, and how circular that is. And then this was the first time that Jung presented on the concept of synchronicity, actually, which to some extent says you can eliminate the time-space factor. I'm going to change my screen, just not that you care, I just it's okay. I'll do it this way. So some descriptions of the objective psyche. Jung's concept of objectiveness hypostasizes it as an independent autonomous fact, prior to and regardless of consciousness, with a meaning of its own. Its laws operate on autonomous terms, irrespective of, and at times contrary to, and in opposition to consciousness, able to overrule and even submerge the ego. Von Franz talked a lot about this stage in Jung's thinking. She says, Jung has shown that what we now call the collective unconscious has never been something psychological. It was always relegated to the outside cosmos, extra-psychic cosmic sphere. The collective unconscious is not an expression of personal wishes and goals, but a neutral entity, psychic in nature, that exists in a transpersonal way. looking at just for a moment, looking at this idea of something psychological versus something cosmic, this is really what the psychoid archetype is. So it basically, before something becomes either psychological or physical, it is this thing. You know, psychoid meant it was neither nor. It was neither psychological nor was it purely matter, but somehow in this container, our psyche, our psychology, our story is also encapsulated in the matter, the universal matter. So von Franz continues, if we define the collective unconscious as Jung did, as an omnipresent continuum of an unextended presence or an unextended everywhere, then something that happens at one point, which touches the collective unconscious, has happened everywhere simultaneously. What Jung called an omnipresence, he also termed elsewhere a relativity of space-time in the deeper layers of the collective. The archetypal realm is eternal outside time and also outside space. So, you know, expanding this into synchronicity, and Whitmont gives a lot of really neat examples of foresight, foreknowledge. And he says, these examples illustrate the hypothetical concept or model of the objective psyche as a concealed personality, a pattern of existence, space and time transcending with an awareness and a function potential of its own, touching upon and yet quite remote from our relational functioning. This predated the 1951 Aranos meeting, but I think his language was already shifting as he was talking about the collective unconscious. And it shouldn't be thought that the collective unconscious was never used again. It was just objective psyche from here on in. But it became as important and somewhat interchangeable as he gets later in his career. And I believe by this time he has been working with Pauly. He says, from the standpoint of the psychology of the personality, a twofold division ensues. There's an extra conscious psyche whose contents are personal, and the extra conscious whose contents are impersonal and collective. The first group comprises contents which are integral components of the individual personality and could therefore just as well be conscious. The second group forms, as it were, an omnipresent, unchanging, and everywhere identical quality or substrate of the psyche per se. Then he says, this, of course, is no more than a hypothesis. And what I find exciting about the book is it is empirical data that his hypothesis holds true. So even though it was a clinical book, as I said, it was a research project. It was taking experiences that most certainly moved into the realm of the collective unconscious. Had data that confirmed that there is no way there isn't some type of collective. I think in post-Jungian debate, there's this idea that it can't exist. And so we're kind of moving back into, more of a Freudian psychoanalytic stance where it doesn't hold. And so part of the book was, no, it really does. So it was empirical data of that. And it is empirical data of like how nebulous it can be as far as the objective psyche. So it was pretty exciting for me, actually, as I was doing the work on the book. So he talks about extra conscious psyche whose contents are personal, and therefore very known. And so I know I showed you Cleveland, and I, showed you the lake. We have to do a little bit more of that, because when we follow my psychotic episodes, they're happening in real time. I'm moving in the world. There's a lot of description. I think sometimes we think about psychosis, and we think about people drawing mandalas about their experience, or, having some fantasies that are off kilter. For me, it was I was acting out on a stage. So I want to take some time. You can imagine this as like if you go to a cocktail party. These are the pictures that the host forces you to look at, even though you don't want to. So I showed you Cleveland. You can see the shore off to the left, and then my town that I lived in at the time, Cleveland Heights. It's a little bit inland. That's actually a picture of my neighborhood, a piece of it. I lived in this apartment building, which was actually a lovely Art Deco building, I thought, anyway. It faces west. It's pretty high up. This is probably the window that was there. I think that was my window, on the 6th of 7 floors. At the time, it was really the tallest apartment building in the area, the tallest building. And Cleveland Heights, the name, refers to the gradually building hills surrounding the city of Cleveland. So we're up the first hill out of the city, and so we're pretty high up. So if you see the window in there, I'm looking out at the treetops, and actually on clear days, I could actually see all the way down to the lake. I was pretty routine oriented by then. I want to pause for a second. Let me back up. No, we were trying to figure out how to do this. This is where I got myself in trouble. Okay. I guess I want to take a pause first about this Cleveland Heights place and how things came to be, because backing up, I was about 35, 36 at that point. Around my 33rd birthday, I began dreaming with an intensity that I'd never really experienced before. And I think this one is kind of stereotypical enough for a Jungian community. Is I was getting tossed around in a sailboat without a sail. And worse than that, the boat was in my house at the time. I was in a different place at the time, and the ocean was in there, and I was crashing against the walls of my apartment. And I couldn't steer or control the boat. I didn't have a sail, so I just got tossed around. So that's like the idea, the ego in the midst of a vast unconscious power of self, no means to navigate. And I hadn't experienced that before. I was seeing somebody for medication management because I had been on medication for 18 years by that point. Called my psychiatrist, asked me if, she could take on any clients, and she couldn't. But she referred me to somebody else, and that somebody else was a Jungian analyst. So that was my first step into the Jungian world and Jungian analysis. And during that time, I became pretty active in the lectures and the classes that our Jungian organization was providing. No one was really talking about medication or even severe mental illnesses as a unique subset of experiences. I know this because my hand would always go up, and I would ask the question, hey, what do you think about medication? And the answer really at that point was always that it was supposed to be like well, first of all, there was some judgment there. It was a shortcut invented by the medical profession as a bypass for exploration. And at best, it was a bridge. before you could kind of get yourself back on track. And until you can be stable enough then to begin the real work then of connecting with dreams and psyche, this kind of self and connection to uppercase S self. And I bought in like big time. So it was right around this time. So these are the pictures that I was sharing. And again, I'm sorry about that. It's just going to be our role. I was trying to just be very aware of how I might be getting in the own way of my balance, right? So if I didn't need medication, what was I doing wrong that, kept me off balance? And so I became quite regimented. I used to have a 4-mile walk that I did almost every day. And this is a little area right up from where I lived. The entire neighborhood uses the bike, the bike paths, the walking paths. I'm going to pause for a minute. One of the reasons I'm going to use some of the language that I'm going to kind of maybe a little bit flowery, descriptive stuff is because when I was creating my data, when I was creating the stream of consciousness narrative, I started with this grounding. And so indulge me, and we're going to ground us again in kind of more of a scenic way. So I described it in the narrative as one of our local gems: families, runners, dog walkers. And I knew many of the regulars by sight, especially their dogs. There was this group of 5 Dachshunds with the lanky owner holding all of the leashes while the dogs would move around his ankles. And there was a man with a golden retriever that would carry his stick around the entire lake. They were quite cute. There was a man in a wheelchair that I would see all the time, who I think just probably lived down the street. So I got to know a rhythm there. I got to know faces. And it was just a beautiful place to walk. And then when the weather was bad, I would go walk at the track at our recreation center, our local rec center. And the picture's trying to show that the track circles an open ceiling that peers down on the basketball courts and ice skating rink, community room. I loved going early Saturday and Sunday mornings. I felt like Cleveland Heights has about a 50%, it's a minority population. So there were a lot of Black men, African-American men playing basketball. There's a lot of stereotypes that come with being a Black man. And so I used to think, well, they're not all in trouble because they're at the gym, at 7:30 playing basketball. It felt nice to me. There were jazzercise and club teams that would be down in this little area where you see the guys with the basketball. It was really a community place. Some mornings there were barely spots to park because hockey took place there. There was ice skating there, like a tumble gym for kids. Now, at the time, I didn't do yoga. I never had taken like a yoga class. 2006, I think it might have been a little bit before I got super popular. But I had found a book that talked about Ayurveda, which is kind of the sister science to yoga. And in it, it had sun salutations. So I mostly did sun salutations. That's all I knew. But I thought I have to, if I'm trying to balance myself and get ready, to be healthier, to really work on myself, I'm going to practice Ayurvedic stuff. I cut out sugar. I did, all this stuff. And so that was also a very serious part of my day. We hear a lot about the I Ching in the Jungian community. It seems to be kind of our favorite oracular connection where we're connecting to this other area. You could call it the collective, self, capital S. Really, it's almost the psychoid archetype that we're talking about, the objective psyche that we're talking about, which is I'm going to try to connect with some other aspect of information, and it works synchronistically because I'm having a psychological state. I'm asking the material world for some kind of inclination of what's going on, and it works. So there's some mechanism that suggests that somewhere in our lexicon we do accept that this kind of connection happens. And I would draw a rune every morning for the day and talk about, I was a little bit overboard, but I would draw a rune for the day to kind of ground me in the philosophy and what I should be thinking about throughout the day. I would draw a rune for the week. There's something called 3 rune spreads where you look at your kind of arc over the next season. And I think this is an interesting piece of it because there is this idea that there is, as we were talking about, there is a connection, there's a synchronistic connection where our self, lowercase s, is connected to uppercase S, self. So that's where the runes, I Ching, they exist in this uppercase self place. Objective psyche, because it's a material, kind of the material world, the psychological material world. It transcends space and time. But Jung would talk about abaissement du nouveau mental. And if recognize maybe the idea of what complexes do, you know, we talk about the energy of a complex. And in the complex, every emotional state produces an alteration of consciousness, which Genet called abaissement du nouveau mental. So it was Pierre Genet's concept at first. A certain narrowing of the consciousness and a corresponding strengthening of the unconscious. The tone of the unconscious heightened, thereby creating a gradient for the unconscious to flow towards the consciousness. So when we had a strong emotion, or, you know, the idea of complex at first, you know, the word association test when he was starting his work, more energy was there. So that space, the lowering of the mental level, allowed some of this pop to get in there. And so I'm going to skip some of that. So there's this idea, as I said, yeah, I can't find the slide I was looking for. I'm so sorry. 21, 22, 23. Well, we'll stick with this slide. Now we'll just look at each other. This idea of a move back and forth between ego, self, that there's a way in which we're asked to be quite humble about that connection, because if we're not humble, then we're inflated. And if you're inflated, you're not grounded. And that's not a healthy relationship to this larger place. And so ego grounding is kind of central to that idea. But when does that change over? And how might that change over? I thought this was a great way to imagine it. The ego stands to the self as the move to the mover, object to subject, because the determining factors which radiate out from the self surround the ego on all sides and are therefore superordinate to it. The self, like the unconscious, is an a priori existence out of which the ego evolves. It is, so to speak, an unconscious prefiguration of the ego. It is not I who create myself, rather I happen to myself. So we're going to move into a shift, the abassement, the shift from a relationship from self to self, flipping it around and coming to a relationship or lack of relationship where I'm here, but self has kind of taken over. They're playing, I'm not playing. I don't want to spend as much time as I had thought on kind of going through some of the pictures. What I can tell you, just to give you a frame about what we're going to be talking about, there's a part of the neighborhood that sits quite high, just like my hill does for my apartment. And if you look down at the one in the left, down left, you can see downtown from there. In the upper left, you can see that, you're kind of looking up from that road. And so you can kind of see how tall it is. And then what you're seeing down there are these very grand, big houses over there. And I began to really have a connection with these homes that became amplified. I will read this. I will, yeah. This particular stretch of road, even as a 6-lane thoroughfare between the height and the flat of the city, impresses with the sense that it has been cut out of wilderness that was once the home of dozens of Indian tribes. The road snakes up between two native shalestone embankments that hold back erosion. Small squares of space have been built into the walls, like windows through which the earth behind can peer out at man's creation, and we can peer in. On one side is a university, one side of the embankment. On the other, you can glimpse the backside of homes in Chestnut Hills, part of a historical district of grand homes built at the turn of the 19th to the 20th century. These homes lord over what is actually the western edge of an escarpment of the Allegheny Mountains. This location has the feel of a king's dwelling, lording over the garrison lands below. Equipped with spyglasses, archers ready, troops scan the valley below and watch for the advance of enemy ships from the sea. We are the land on the banks of glacial fresh water. Before the white men came and slew the great Shawnee Indian chief Tecumseh in the War of 1812. The tribes must have felt blessed by this view as well. So that's all true. And it's not like we don't fantasize or play around with the beauty of some kind of landscape and think, oh my gosh, I can totally see how that would be. So that's kind of that extra conscious stuff that can be personal, I feel like, that Jung was talking about in that quote from Ion. We have our creativity, we have our imagination. So what I'm going to do now is play the first of one of the stream of consciousness pieces. It's not date specific, it's tone specific. And so as we're listening, there's a couple of things. There's some places, objects, scenes that are true. And so when you hear it, you should know that there's a hospital near me. And there were life flights that would come in and out. So we had helicopters there. The westward-facing window in my small studio is as wide and as tall as the wall itself. 3-story apartment buildings to my left and my right, I tower over them. The studio is light. At night, there is nothing to block the moon from shining full force into the window. On nights the moon is full, I have to pull the curtains. There is an assisted living facility across the street. It is an apartment building like mine, but it has a grand circular driveway where the special medical transport vehicles line up and wait for their next group to take to the grocery store, the doctor's office, wherever. They are mostly black faces in the driver's seats. I can see them from above, the proof of a minority class that takes care of all things for the ruling class, the white class. Nurses' aides, drivers, orderlies, there they are, right across the street, fulfilling indispensable duties for minimum wage. The vans are lined up to do their jobs, but I also know they are waiting for us, waiting for the signal. They will ride out like the warrior convoy that they are. The meek shall inherit the earth. The white man will wither in the unfettered heat of the sun, blasting through without the protection of the ozone layer. White men did that too. They will burn first. They will die first. And the time of the brown skin can rise again. These vans will move on you. The ancient lands on the edge of the lake will be taken by the righteous once again. This land will belong to the righteous once more, and a new breed of the white race, returned to the ancient brown skin of things, will blend humanity through the deepening of things, a return of the deep colors of soul. We are the inhabitants of ancient glacial lands from the continent that held the beginning of things. We will do our deed as the final stronghold after the floods, when the meek shall inherit the earth, and as the leaders in battle, we will hold court from above. I stand in front of my window at different times of day to gather the forces. I stand with my thumbs and forefingers touching in the shape of a downward triangle on my abdomen, tucked, resting perfectly between my belly button and my pelvis. I gather the energy in my abdomen and lift my arms, triangle still held in an arc up over my head. The triangle is now right side up, facing the heavens. I hold the symbol above me, gather my energy, and bend down in swan dive until my hand touches the ground in front of my toes. The triangle rests on the floor. I come back to standing. I am the witch, the priestess, connecting with the powers that be to let them know we are ready. I listen to the helicopters outside my window. I know the airstrike is gathering their forces. My partner is flying. The best man I've ever known. Vietnam veteran, loyal, honest, brave. He and his team have got me covered from the air. I'm moving things on the ground. We shall complete our mission. All of those aligned with the rebels will go safety on to Martha's Vineyard, the last haven, while the rest of the country floods and cleanses itself. If we can all just make it. I walk my route around the ravine and the lake, looking up at the oaks and pines and maple trees, thick trunks, tall trees, some over 100 years old. I feel the power of the universe wrestling in those trees. My hips are opening, old psychological baggage loosening. I feel rooted to the earth and connected to the heavens. I'm struck by one of my favorite pair of owner and dog that is there most days. The man is a late middle-aged black man that parks his blue Buick sedan on the far side of the lake, past the walking bridge. He's a mild-mannered seeming guy with some kind of black German Shepherd mix. The dog is as peaceful as his owner seems. The dog climbs in and out of the back seat of their blue sedan silently. He gets walked on a thick cotton rope. It's long, and the dog never strains at it. It's always slack. He's just attached and moseying like his owner. I can imagine them looking at the water, then looking at each other, agreeing how nice and peaceful it all is. I realize one day that he has been there for me all along. He has been standing guard. He is a part of our army as well, just as relaxed and vigilant as any special ops soldier might be. I wave at him from the distance on one of the days. He waves back. I move on. As I'm coming back from one of my walks, I notice a perfect acorn on the path. I pick it up and bring it home. Back home in my studio, I take the acorn and place it on my coffee table on a small dish that also holds the onyx blank rune from my set. Objects have their own energy fields. That acorn was emanating a powerful aura of its own. It was meant for me. The onyx rune was a symbol of the life in the world coming to be. They were talismans. So just a couple of things. First of all, you're going to see as we keep moving forward, there are some characters that exist. And if we think about this idea of things becoming increasingly amplified, let's say this is a guy that I know. He was a good friend. But he had archetypal qualities that must have really gotten grabbed up in my move toward the objective psyche. And so you're going to hear me talk about him quite a bit. I try to describe it in a way that you can hear kind of the movement back and forth between the man, the archetype, the creature, and the psychosis. The other thing is, as I'm speaking them out, just as a reminder, it was written as stream of consciousness. It was trying to get a feel, and it came about as I was trying to remember this. So it might sound a little flowery or sound a little dramatic or even chunky or not flowing, but it's really, again, it's kind of raw data. So I just want to put that out there. And the last thing I don't think I shared is my connection with Martha's Vineyard. So that did have a very personal connection to me. I lived there for about 4.5 years. And so what I would say is, again, that was also a part of my extra psychic personal experience. I loved it there. We're going to be talking about it as this kind of destination for salvation. So yeah, you can see kind of how your individual psyche, your individual extra psychic stuff, subjective stuff gets latched on now to kind of a broader story. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play one more clip. It's a little over 5 minutes, and then we'll take a break and talk a bit amongst ourselves if people have questions or clarification or insights that they want to share. Then there's two more pieces, 2 more 15-minute pieces that I'm hoping that we have time for. But we'll stop when we stop for the, for our discussion. I'm going to share a little bit more of a context as far as what we're looking for and what I coded for in the research. So. Okay, so this actually, I'm putting us back into our neighborhood again. We've got this short period of time that we're talking about, which is once my medication, that's the bulk of the narrative, is once my medication gets below 25 milligrams. I started at 400 milligrams of Lamictal, that's what I took. And this is the time of my titration off the medication where I'm down all the way to 25. And so this is kind of the final journey of my psychosis, or the final days of the journey, I would say. When I go to see my analyst, I tell her I'm having a hard time settling down. The energy I have is flitting about. I talk about healing energy. I don't know what else, but she tells me if I'm feeling off kilter to go sit at the roots of a tree to ground myself. She's so wise, I try it. I take my 4-mile walk. I actually see General God's car careening by on several occasions during my route. I know he is keeping tabs, making sure I'm safe. At the end of the walk, I choose to sit down at the roots of a massive tree on a large grassy island separating the roads. I am sitting at the crossroads, waiting for General God to come for me. He has passed me several times. I believe this is what he wants me to do, to wait here for him. I'm desperately trying to connect with the massive exposed tree roots I'm sitting on. I'm sitting Indian style against the trunk. My neighborhood is a half-mile down the hill in front of me, and Chestnut's Hills is a half-mile down to the left of me. I think he is supposed to be picking me up and taking me to Chestnut Hills. He doesn't come. Have I been betrayed? Has he tricked me into believing he's an ally? Is he actually Lucifer? I can see this form of him rising too. Now his followers are under the sway of the Dark Lord. He cruises slowly through the neighborhoods in his impeccable coupe with his gang of power. I feel terribly frightened, vulnerable to attack. But I make my way back to my apartment, vigilant and wary. I realize this has been yet another test of my bravery. He is a cruel General God, but cunning and bright. I have a great deal to learn. Much later, around sunset or a little after, I drive to the General God's house. I tell him how insecure I've become and how unacceptable it is to keep testing me in this way. We are talking about our relationship. We are sitting in the easy chairs he has in the living room. We've sat in these chairs before, watching television, eating our leftovers on TV trays, the very leftovers I'd choked on just days before. I'm not scared at him. I'm serene. I know the earlier challenge he set in front of me. I know I have passed. He looks at me and seems in awe. He realizes I have risen to his challenges, that I am strong. He says, "And look at you here, looking like an Indian princess." I'm wearing overalls, a t-shirt, no makeup. My dark brown hair is down. I think he sees it now. I am becoming what I am meant to be, the subtle princess ready to go to battle and become the queen. I decide not to stay for dinner. I go back to my apartment and order takeout. I walk through my neighborhood to get takeout at the restaurant across the main street. Once I walk out of the lobby of my building, I cross our back lot, walk through a bit of courtyard from the apartment building next door, down the side street, and across the main drag kitty corner to the restaurant. It's hot, and the sun has already gone down. I walk to the restaurant peacefully, safely, because I know my power has gathered. no one would dare. The neighborhood is entirely safe, and some know they have a queen moving amongst them. Others have no clue. I'm just a girl in overalls. Walking home with my food, I notice the African-American custodian from the building next door. I will pass him in the sliver of courtyard on the way back to my building. He's lit a barbecue and is grilling food. He is sitting on a lawn chair with a glass of wine. There are other chairs, other tenants come and go. I ask if I can join him, break bread with him. We do. In the partial light from the apartment building hall and the embers of the barbecue, we sit and talk to one another. I found out he was in the army too, had served overseas. I lean forward and ask him if I can count on him. I tell him every white Jewish girl in politics needs a black man standing guard. We lock eyes. It is sometime late at night now. The neighborhood is almost entirely quiet, but early enough that everybody's lights are still on. I am showering, the queen in her lair. My bathroom window is actually in the shower, looking out over the same western exposure. No one can see in, because I'm at least 3 floors above anyone else, and the windowsill is more than a foot deep. It is carved into the thick brick walls of the building. I am above the fray. But if someone were looking, really looking, if they knew who and what they were looking for, well, there I'd be. So I'm here in the shower with the bathroom light on to dare the unworthy. We dare them to look at me. We know I am being watched, and I will let them, because they will be among the enemy we have identified. Who is watching me? They have let themselves be found out. They are not worthy foes, not worthy at all. I hear the helicopters outside. My God General and his men are hard at work. You'll get them, I think. I'm smiling to myself. My eyes are narrowed and smiling. Idiots, I think. You'll burn, I think. I get out of the shower and, still naked, move to my position in front of the main window of the studio. I place the sign of the upside-down triangle above my pelvis. I stretch into the air, lifting the symbol of the triangle high overhead, turning its point skyward now. I swan dive to the floor, and the triangle rests for a moment before I rise. Take a deep breath. Exhale. Cover myself and retreat to the safety of my cover. So I thought we'd pause and just if you guys have thoughts to share or questions or something's not holding together well, yeah, let's spend a few minutes doing that. Do we have anything, Gustavo?
Not at the moment. Just a message for you from someone that left it. We have Cindy there with her hand up.
Hi, Cindy.
Haley, thank you. This is fascinating, and there's so many layers to it. But I have one specific question that I was struck by with your narrative, that it is, you called it a stream of consciousness, but it's so coherent and clear, like you're telling a story. And to a listener, I was wondering if you recall, or if you recall a sense of who you're narrating to, or who is listening when you're in these states.
Well, I think it's harder because I recorded it, and so it does kind of come across as maybe a bit like a studied, whatever. I don't know if I had an audience, really. I really was thinking about it as grabbing grabbing this adventure that I had, and framing the time periods. I spent a lot of time trying to frame what day was what. Where did I go there? Oh, that email shows me I was there on this date. You know, so there's some general stuff. And yeah, there's a tone. I think I enjoy writing. So I think that there is a tone that comes out, which was helpful for the narrative, at least in my opinion, because part of what was going on was a general tone or feel of how I felt during these periods. It was meant to be cohesive enough and exact and follow my mind enough to be something that could be coded or followed. I don't know how this happened, and I'm interested in other people's thoughts. It's been almost 20 years now. I was actually writing the narrative in 2012. So it is fading from me, just like any memory fades. But really, as I was writing, I was really there. So if there is a story there, it's just me trying to get it down on paper in a sense fashion. It probably was to myself. With the realization that this is something that is going to be used. But it really was me tracing my way through action and how kind of the day unfolded. So I guess I was telling it in a way that organized it for myself in real time, you know, the things that I was actually doing, and telling it to try to be true to the experience of it all. Because there's a lot of, with the other narratives, there's a lot of feeling state specific stuff. If we listen to some of their narratives, there's like a feel of what they're doing or what they're doing and how it feels as they're doing it. So I hadn't read them yet when I did mine, but it does kind of reveal itself as people are trying to reflect on these states of mind and really states of body. I think that's the whole thing, is that body energy feels quite different as well. So I was trying to capture body energy, attitude, action.
So it does have that feeling like there's an ego coherency.
No, that's the weird thing. That's the weird thing. There's something that's in my mind, like a movie camera. It's like a movie. As we go forward, I mean, of course, I'm functioning, at least for this short time. You know, I was going to meetings. I was still working part-time. I'm driving to the grocery store. I mean, there's ways in which I was certainly in the world. But it wasn't like I was from a place that says, I feel grounded now. This is what I'm doing now. It was a shift in how I saw anything and everything outside of me. And maybe the next grouping of recordings will kind of show that transition. We can come back to
I just wanted to say thank you for your courage using your own material and the whole trajectory, you know, of how you're getting there. It's really fascinating.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, originally, so I think I said earlier, the original thing was to show where my medication was and how crazy I got, and then where my medication was and how much saner I got. And to code it according to certain categories, which I'll share. But this is the first time I've kind of just like had you know, shared my journey. So I appreciate that. Yeah.
We have a couple of more people. Carol?
Yes. Hello.
Hi. Hi.
Hi, it's early for me today, so I'm sorry I'm not on video, but
That's okay.
I'm on the West Coast. But yeah, thanks again for sharing such personal material. And what I find interesting, I have a couple of comments, is that I'm reminded of the ego-self axis and how I've had a couple of these experiences myself, and I'm far beyond them, but it's so interesting to hear your recollection through your recorded narratives after the fact, which reminds me of something I'm very interested in, which is two things: psychogeography, so connecting with the land and sort of embodying oneself in connection with the land and examining the disconnections that we feel in the modern world. And then secondly, the notion of the imaginal ego that James Hillman wrote about in, I think it was Myth of Analysis, or the book on the underworld, but Dreams in the Underworld. So I think what you're doing in the recollections, the recorded recollections, is capturing that state again within what we could call, what James Hillman called, the imaginal ego. And that's the power of this kind of narrative analysis that you're demonstrating through this work, which I think is, I'm quite interested in this myself with literature and creative writing. So I also wanted to remind you that everything is coming through really well and really cohesive. And so I'm just appreciating that you had the courage to do this, and that you're bringing this work forward. Yeah.
Well, thank you for that, Carol. Because this is the first time I've taught it this way, and so I wasn't really sure how it was holding together.
It is definitely, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and it'll help people understand maybe how to work with people that are within that psychotic state. It will run its course, and I also think it's Kundalini related, and you were doing yoga, and anyway, that's a whole other conversation.
Yeah, I'm not sure it would have run its course, but that, yeah, we can talk. Hopefully we'll have to talk about that.
Yeah. Okay.
Kate?
Thank you.
Liz?
Yes, it was a very interesting talk. Thank you very much, Hallie. What was missing for me was knowing a bit more about you, your background, what has happened to you, and why you were in psychiatric care. Was it such a traumatic experience that you have to now sort of remember it in this way, or can you go back to the trauma and talk about that a bit?
Yeah, so and this kind of gotten shifted around. Thank you, Liz. So I tried to jump in because I was trying to ignore the whole story to try to get where we were. I did talk about, so when I was 18, and this is all in the book. So I had my first psychotic episode when I was 18 years old. And that had its own patterns, similar patterns, but as to what, I experienced when I was 36. But that...
Could I ask whether there was a specific reason for the psychotic episode?
Yes.
Specific emotions that came up out of the blue, but there was a kind of grounded reason for it.
No, I think that's the issue. Well, yes, there was a reason for it. And the reason for it was because I carried a genetic disorder.
Oh, right.
Bipolar 1 disorder. And I was in college at the time, and the epigenetic trigger probably was lack of sleep. It was finally sleep.
Okay, yeah.
And I smoked a little too much dope, which can be really troublesome for somebody who's got this predisposition towards this genetic disorder. And I go through the nature of the disorder a lot more in order to do just kind of what you're bringing up, which is to try and say, sometimes this stuff happens because of a chemical thing first. And so we have this idea that trauma comes first, the psychosis comes second, and that what we need to do is heal the traumatic stuff so we can get back into a more grounded ego place. So that is not to say that is some of the experiences that potentially psychoanalytically people have. What I'm also saying is it comes the other way around. And that's why a discussion of the objective psyche is so important, because it is then something from somewhere else, because of whatever is happening to us chemically, comes unbidden. And eventually it usurps. It usurps. So, that Cindy's question, how do I remember this? Or I don't know. But I was usurped. And certainly becoming psychotic when I was 18 was extremely painful. I look back on it teary, I get teary, I was a cute young thing, freshman in college, making friends, and to have something sneak up on me like that was clearly disrupted. I mean, it changed my whole trajectory in my life. That's kind of how I ended up at Martha's Vineyard the first time. I was like, I was getting stable for the first time. It was about 4 years later. I didn't want to take medication. I was not on regular medication. I would start school, I'd drop out of school. I would start school, I'd drop out of school. I took a car and went down to Florida. It was a wild time, which would be very descriptive of mania in the experience of bipolar disorder. When I got back on my medication, it was really a healing experience, very slow to get back into what I liked about life. So first I was on the vineyard and I lived on the island, and I was going to be a horseback riding instructor and write and have this really wonderful, simple life. And then that was too constricting. So that's when I came back to Cleveland to start my social work degree. Then that was too constricting. So I have gone through a lot of these grapplings. And one of the reasons, so I found Jungian analysis because I was going through one of these grapplings, and it was actually more energetic than I had experienced before, like Carol was talking about. And it was really intense. I would say breakthroughs of self at a really frenetic pace. And so to me, this is kind of what we talk about when we talk about therapy, we talk about trying to manage, kind of the Jungian relationship to self. That was a very natural part of my individuation, something that I needed to handle, something that I was grappling with, something that I've always embraced. Actually, I embraced it too much and decided that I didn't need the medication anymore. So that's where this enter this. So we're in July, but I had made this really difficult decision. And funny, I didn't have enough time. I skipped over it, but if we want to go back to it, I actually used the I Ching to kind of frame, and I was very methodical in how I did it. I framed the question, I followed all the rules. I was using, kind of Stephen Karcher's framing for the I Ching. And the question was, what would happen if I go off of my medication? And the answer was great idea. Seriously, it was there. We can, if we have time, we'll go back to it. But I felt so supported by the universe. I felt so supported that this was the exact thing I needed to do. That medication was ruining my connection, my ego self-access work. And so I made that decision to go off my medication. That started in April, and I titrated down 25 milligrams a week. And it took me to this time period that we're talking about, mid-July. So I don't think it was a trauma. I think it was an invasion of objective psyche, because my chemistry allows something like that to be so. And I have a whole theory and discussion about how the medication I take, which is a mood stabilizer, is so aligned with this idea of an energetic universe or a psychoid universe where it's both psyche and matter. So, and it's just that it's I was doing 4-hour workshops and it was hard to get to. So I apologize if I dumped you into a space where there wasn't enough context. But boy, the whole thing is, I think pretty powerful. I mean, it really is the book is empirical research, because it's kind of like I was the independent variable. I'm going through my life. I'm as I described, I'm really invested in the Jungian idea of ego self. Medication's not very well accepted. I was like, yeah, I'm in. I'm gonna do that too. And this is back in 2006. I'm not sure what I'm picking up with your eyes, but so I did that, and April, May, June, July, 4 months later, I was in the hospital. And then I went back on my medication. So that was the empirical, it was making a relationship between one and the other. But this stuff that we're talking about today, you couldn't really measure. I mean, you can't really measure objective psyche except how it breaks through and the patterns in the collective unconscious. And so the narratives did that as well, that there are certain categories, and it's really, moving to the next narratives or the next section, really remarkable how they aligned. My narrative, the narratives of the others that I used in the work, all fall into these same types of categories. So there too, I was really trying to reinforce this notion of the collective unconscious and this transcendent material that comes to us. That help?
Yes, thank you very much for putting it into context. Thank you.
I know. Thank you for that feedback, because it is hard to jump in, and I'll have to figure out a better way of doing it, certainly. Okay.
Hallie, I was wondering if I could sort of step aside from my moderator and ask you a question as an attendee for a second.
Yeah.
First, I just want to say thank you, because there is something about what you're talking that I think goes, at least in my case, to the core of why I'm a Jungian, I would say. And I am not sure exactly. I mean, I have intuitions and indications, but anyway, thank you for that. And I want to ask if, you mentioned right now that how this happened because there is, let's say, a genetic biological predisposition that allows for the objective psyche to erupt, so to speak, right? So I'm curious if that ever happens to you now as a clinician, and how that sort of I'm thinking specifically of sort of transference and countertransference fields. And the reason I'm asking that is because back when I was recently graduated from college, one of my first clinical positions was in a bipolar disorder institution, and I'm an epileptic. I have mesial temporal lobe epilepsy.
Yep.
And back then I didn't know anything, but I started to notice eventually that every time that a manic episode was coming in the patient, during my session with them, I would start having an epileptic aura, right? Which I did not know what to do then. No. And it's something that still happens to me, sort of to varying degrees, not only with bipolar disorder, and I don't know how to explain it. So I just was wondering what you thought about that in terms of sort of the transfers and countertransference.
Well, I think I would love to talk to you more, actually. And this is why I'm so excited. First of all, my disorder and your disorder share medications. So my mood stabilizer that I use is used in helping with epilepsy. I firmly believe that there is a shared, there's a shared something as far as energy goes, that we are talking about certain functions that are about, I don't know enough about epilepsy. I think that is so amazing that somebody else's mania, that somebody else's energy shifts, because it really is an energy shift, can cause really rapid energy shifts for you. So I am sincerely interested in this. first, I wouldn't say it comes out in my therapy as much. I call it the slipstream. So it's not like I have lost some kind of untethered connection to the world. I don't float away. I don't lose myself like I lost myself in mid-July. But there are times when, like I don't really like going out by myself. I'll take my partner with me, or I'll just stay at home because I feel so, I'm just not quite here. There's a numinosity to everything. And in all the narratives, there's this pop of like, everything becomes hyper illuminated, colors become more vivid. And there's, it's a shift in being, where all of a sudden I'm in this numinosity, I guess I would say. But the veil between the two is pretty tenuous, and I'm pretty exhausted. I think that psychosis really did a number on me. And so I have less, I'm more like frail is not a bad word, but my stability is quite a bit more tenuous. When I go through things, again, this is what Jungian analysis is all about. This was what Jung was about, these confrontations with the unconscious, which I have, where intense dreaming or active imagination or anything else that's going on, they're very powerful. And I think that connection I've had, they're accessible. Yeah. When I'm with clients, I'm quite a thinking type. I'm an intuitive thinker. And so I'm quite analytic in the session. What I can say is that I can feel things energetically often. So I can pick up on their affect quite often. Mm-hmm. So they're withholding tears, I'm crying. Or they're angry and my gut's pulsing. And so my extrovert sensing function, I think, kicks in. But and I don't see a lot of floridly manic people either. I have a private practice where I'm, people have to be able to show up for session. And so they're more like the walking neurotic, whatever. So I've never had to confront another psychotic person. So I don't know what would happen to me, but I do think that the disorders are different. But so that your brain is express, I can see why that would happen potentially, and that my feeling might be a little different, where I kind of float away or get very tenuous with what reality feels like, if that makes any sense.
It does. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. I guess we can't, there's too many of us to take a total consensus, but since we're talking about these feeling states, I want to go actually to some of the other descriptions. I think that might help a little bit. So I'm going to skip around, and it might mean that we don't have quite enough as much time for the stream of consciousness recordings, but this is Maura Coate speaking. She was she was in mid-century Britain. I was in a state of the most vivid awareness and illumination. I can't, it's funny, I can't see it. You guys can see it. Does someone want to read it? I don't know if that's stupid or not, but the group of you are, the line on Zoom is right on my slide. So I don't know, Gustavo, would you be willing to read it?
I can, yeah. You can also move the banner up if that helps you, but sure, I'll do it.
Okay.
Let me read it.
Okay. Oh yeah, I can. Look at that.
Yeah. You want to read it, or should I read it?
You read it. You read this one.
Okay. I was in a state of the most vivid awareness and illumination. What can I say of it? The cloudless, cerulean blue sky of the mind shot through with shafts of exquisite, warm, dazzling sunlight. It seemed that some force or impulse from without were acting on me, looking into me, that I was in touch with a reality beyond my own, that I had made direct contact with the secret, the ultimate source of life. What I had read of the accounts of others acquired suddenly a new meaning. It flashed across my mind. This is what the mystics mean by the direct experience of God.
Yeah. So what I can tell you is she would have series of ECT, electroconvulsive therapy, when she was psychotic. And she said, at one point she said, I awoke one day as my normal self to the consciousness that I had recently been mad. I tried to hope that this was not true, that I had dreamed it. This hope quickly died. So that's an example of medical intervention that can shock you into a different state of being. Here's something by John Custance. I, a very ordinary lunatic and a miserable sinner, have personally experienced something of the kind which has not totally abandoned me. What I seem to have secured through the strange and unforgettable experience of manic depression is precisely the sense of purpose, the apprehension of the altogether of which I have written. In ordinary language, it is simply God and an indefinable sense of nearness to him. Now, I remember reading from Aniela Yaffe's work. She was Jung's personal secretary, and she talks about, Jung chose the term unconscious, but he was referring to God, to some kind of God construct, to some type of umbrella of, transcendent meaning. And so often what I think this numinous connection to is a connection to that space. I guess let's pause, actually, because I can go in a lot of directions here. And what I can tell us is I've got about 25 minutes of recording right now. And there's 2 days that it captures. It captures July 18th, which is the day before I'm hospitalized. And that one is about 15 minutes. And then it captures July 19th, which is the day I am hospitalized. And we can spend time with one or both of those. Before we do, I want to put up the thematic coding that I used with the narrative, so you guys can kind of see when that material rises up in the narrative. Or we can kind of go more to the place where I took us just now, where we're talking about the experiences that the other contributors had. So I don't know how we make that final decision, but I think I'd like to turn it to the group a little bit for their choice. Nobody cares. It's okay one way or the other.
Yeah, I would say it's flowing really well. So why don't you just follow we have thumbs up from Doug. So how about you just follow your intuition?
Okay.
Just mindful that we have about half an hour left. So whatever fits better in that time.
So I'll do that. We're going to get as far as we can, and that's as far as we'll go. Let me just get us to the right place. So what I want to put up for you are are the categories that were used for coding when I did the work. And this is from John Ware Perry, who did a lot of work with schizophrenics. And in his work, he actually did about 50 years of research. And his research found that these types of content showed up repeatedly, reaffirming this notion of the collective unconscious that Jung came up with, that there's archetypal things happening. We can see the visions of, when we were talking about the Eranos conference of 51, where we've got the eschatology present. And we see that in these delusions, there's visions of cosmic center where the universe coalesces, worldwide clashes between good and evil, Armageddon, Last Judgment, mythic stories. I think in the narratives I've already shared, you can hear that there was fire. A fire was coming. They're going to get burned. They were going to get flooded out. Everybody's got to leave for the promised land. So even in the narratives that I was showing, there is something quite that's present there already. New birth, creation of a new world is also very present. And the thing about these is that they move back and forth between religious and pure. And I know, I'm sorry, I didn't put us into the. I'm just going to leave it like that. It's almost easier for me to navigate. It switches back and forth from religious and political. And so that's a kind of a weird thing. So you can see that the hero archetype comes out in lots of different ways. So you can be elected to office. You can be the king, the queen, or you might be Jesus. You can be, kind of a political reformer, or you can be, a religious, it can be a religious journey. And it really bounces back and forth. And honestly, it bounced back and forth for me too. One point I was in politics. I don't know if you remember that. I leaned forward to the African-American custodian and said, every Jewish girl needs a guy in needs a black guy for if you're going to be in politics. So there I was going to be a political figure. As we move into these next ones, I'm a number of things all at once. So let's go into, sorry. Okay, so this is the next grouping. This is the last day. This is the day before I get hospitalized. It runs about close to 15 minutes. So this will take us pretty close to the end.
I come home and pour a bath. My heart is racing a bit now. I know I am under a time constraint now. I know that things are moving and that it is my
I think it stopped, right?
There. Sorry. Earlier in the day. This is earlier in the day.
There you go.
In regular fashion, I've given my gold bracelet to General God, who is also just a man, to have the clasp fixed. He knows the jeweler across from his store. When I get to the gym, he is already there, lifting weights. I start my walk around the track, 10 times around, 4 miles, just like my route outdoors. We don't say anything to one another as I walk my laps. We look at each other and lock eyes every time I pass the equipment he's using. He's in shorts. I never see him in shorts. He is always in baggy sweatpants and sweatshirts. Today, he is in tennis shorts, and I think, my God, he's unwrapping himself in his splendor. I can't believe how fit and strong he is. I know that if he is publicly unfurling his identity, the time is getting closer. All systems go. I look down at the basketball courts and bleachers below. I see African American faces, mothers, children, young men, grown men. They sit on the bleachers and watch the world go by. I know that this is the shelter for everyone to come to for safety. I know they know this is their safe space. They will all rally here on higher ground, protected, waiting for the worst of the fighting to be over, waiting for the floodwaters to recede and begin anew. It is a beautiful sight, a reassuring sight. We are moving, coming out of hiding. The troops are waiting for our signal. We continue our exercise routines. When he moves to the mats to stretch, he places my gold bracelet next to him. I can see it glinting under the community center's powerful lights. It is my sign. I finish my walk and go over to General God, who is unfolding his power and losing his human edge. We are chatting. Others are on mats, lifting weights, moving in and around us. He says, "I'm sorry, I couldn't get the clasp fixed." I say, "That's okay." We say, "See you later." As I walk out the doors of the community center, a tall, thin, black man comes in. He's clearly a runner. He has the body of a marathon runner, like the ones we see from Kenya. Long, lanky, sinewy. As we pass each other in the doorway, I look him in the eyes, and he looks in mine. We hold eye contact as we pass each other. He has come. The messenger has made it to safety. He will deliver his message to General God and will most likely have to be on his way again, running, sending messages. I have this ridiculous meeting with my boss and the program committee. I have no patience, no lingering hopes for this job. But I have to do what I have to do, and this is a meaningful outreach program into a largely minority, lower socioeconomic section of the community. I arrive to the coffee house early. I'm sitting out on the patio facing the parking lot with its kitschy retro chairs and wrought iron tables. I look at the plants, the free community newspapers, the community bulletin board. It's striking me for the first time how progressive this place is and how strong it is in its identity. I'm feeling powerful here. This is a safe haven. The Kabbalistic rabbi I have been meeting with recently about numerology and spiritual community almost walks past me and into the coffee shop. I say hello. I'm leaning back with my feet on a chair in front of me. My eyes are flashing. The opal around my neck is luminous, and the diamonds are sparkly. For some reason, I'm not entirely trusting him. I smile at him, but it is a veiled, dangerous smile. He seems nervous. "I didn't even know it was you. You look so different," he says. I think, well, of course. My true energy has unfolded. "Well, good to see you," he says, as if trying to figure out whether to stay and question things or give me a wide berth. I can understand why he is tentative. I would be too, in front of a warrior princess. I go inside and order coffee at the counter. The young 20-something man that serves me is in full black eyeliner and mascara. He's friendly, intense, unabashed. We look at each other and smile. I scan the scene behind the counter. Other young hipsters in heavy black eye makeup, young men and women, piercings, tattoos, spiked hair, messy hair, sweet smiles. They are all versions of one another, male or female, radical individuals among radical individuals. An underlying peace to them, an underlying knowing that they are starting something, that the revolution has been brewing for a few years now. This is an entirely new generation. I'm 36. They are 18 or so. But they have known longer than we have. They have grown up with this energy. We are older, and we have had to reconnect to it. I think to myself, this is how it is all becoming. We are at the Phoenix, where the new rises from the ashes, and it is a new androgyny, where boys can be in full makeup and girls can sport crew cuts and combat boots. The sexuality has mixed and no one seems bothered. They are at one with both the masculine and the feminine. It's a group energy now. The music is playing in the background, the servers and baristas simply doing what they do in the model of the world that is going to come. I sit down at a long table in the corner tucked next to a wall. I have my back to the windows, facing the back of the coffee shop. I'm unconcerned. There are 3 African American women seated behind me. I know they have my back, and they have been assigned to this meeting. The baristas and workers know now, too. They have seen the opal, and they know. It really is me. It's going to be okay. The committee members come. It's a short meeting. I know I can't stay too long. There is a risk that this coffee shop is going to become a casualty of the war, and I can't be found here. These committee members are marked. They are unfriendlies. The black women behind me are a fortress of feminine strength. They are facing the front windows to the street, and they can see the threats and can swoop me up in a minute. Turn on this committee in a minute. My new androgynous friends at the Phoenix are unconcerned about impending danger. They are the ones that will rise from the ashes. They know this, and have known this. They are the younger generation that has been waiting for the leadership that was sure to come if they just remained present and poised for action. I come home and pour a bath. My heart is racing a bit now. I know I am under a time constraint now. I know that things are moving and that it is my responsibility to begin the forward movement from the ground. I know my position here is no longer safe. I have to get out of town. But there are steps I need to take. First, I need to bathe. Then, I need to prepare the apartment for my allies when they've made it and have refortified the building. I have the piles of books organized by what is needed for what group, all lined up on the shelves in the nook where I have my bed and my bookshelves. I have smashed all vestiges of negative energy in the apartment, gifts from friends that have proven themselves full of repressive and evil energy, jewelry that has been carrying the ghosts of foes without me realizing. I have to do what I've been preparing for, training for with my general God. I start by chewing the acorn, the seed of new life. I'm not particularly concerned with swallowing the opal, although I do worry that the scalloped edges of the diamonds might stick in my throat. But it is the step I need to do to bring the butterfly out from the caterpillar. It is the alchemical formula. The gold, the opal, the diamond, elements from the earth, the acorn to bring new growth. This journey of mine began when I was 18 years old. I'm almost 36
Oh, so sorry.
now.
Sorry.
The time is right. The elements of the pendant, the gold, the opal, the diamond, will dissolve in me and transform the vestiges of what I've been into the form I've become. It is the alchemical transmutation. I chew the acorn, I swallow the opal. And now I must draw runes for the final instructions for my allies when they get here. I sit on the sofa in front of the window, the site of countless rune spreads and lessons. I take my onyx bag of stones and shift them in my hands, all but Odin's runes, the blank rune, the final piece I have to swallow. This will be a 5-rune spread. Runes for the overview, the challenge, the course of action, the sacrifice, the new situation evolving. I sit on my couch in front of the window. My task lamp is on, and I am placing the runes on the wide, foot-deep wooden window well, so the helicopters can come close and view the results once I'm gone. I place the carved onyx stones one by one onto the window ledge. Then I write down the symbol and their translation into my little brown journal, which I will be taking with me. This done, I prepare to swallow the blank rune, Odin's rune, because this is the radical faith I need. It is a test of faith. Odin's rune, the unknowable, the divine, the all-father. Blank is the end, blank the beginning. This is the rune of total trust and should be taken as exciting evidence of your most immediate contact with your own true destiny, which, time and again, rises like the phoenix from the ashes of what we call fate. The appearance of this rune can portend a death, but that death is usually symbolic and may relate to any part of your life as you are living it now. Relinquishing control is the ultimate challenge for the spiritual warrior. And this piece of onyx is big. I know choking on my food at General Godman's house was in preparation for this task. It's an odd shape, like a skewed hexagon on top, thick through its middle, perhaps a half-inch circumference. But I have to do it, and so I do it. My bath is ready. I've made a shallow bath, just enough to skim over the tops of my thighs and up to my belly button. I'm sitting in the silence, breathing, and again know what I have to do. I realize that when I submerge my head, I'm risking death. I can picture myself under the bath water with my eyes open, staring up at the bright, high ceiling. Does the universe support me or doesn't it? I know this is a test. If I am truly ready for this journey, I will drown and survive. So I lay flat and long on the bottom of the porcelain tub and just lean back, resting my head on the porcelain tub bottom. And then we will see. Radical trust. My heart is beating. I am grateful. I have been completely submerged in the water, and I have risen. My hair is wet, and I am dripping and clean. From here, I begin to move more quickly. I replace the flash and brilliance of the opal I'd swallowed with a subtle little diamond tucked into platinum, a gift from a trusted friend whose special gift is blending seamlessly into white culture, a supporter among non-supporters, who will continue to thrive in the new order because she is subtle, subdued, principled. My friend has modeled inconspicuous fortune. It's the Christian way. As a Jew, I know about flash and conspicuous consumption. I'm going to pause for that piece just because you don't need it as much for context unless we're going to the final narratives, which we're not. So I'm just going to get myself, we're just going to do this little piece and go from there. It's late. I'm not sure how late, but the city has turned in for the night and is fast asleep. 1 a.m., 2 a.m.? The book stacks have been organized for my comrades. I've left a message on my dry erase board that my warriors will understand, and I have left the 5 rune spread on the windowsill. There are things they'll have to get out of my locker in the basement, but they'll know what to do. I move quickly down the staircase, 6 floors, and walk to my car in the parking lot next door. It, too, is an inconspicuous car, just a 10-year-old black sedan. Simple, under the radar. But my license plate is a marker for all who need to see. DJH 8650. It's my radio frequency. Radio DJ Hallie, channel 8650. I move at the speed limit up the long, straight road toward the highway. It is the main thoroughfare, east to west, and about 8 miles from my house, there is a freeway entrance that will take me to the interstate. The 6-lane road is empty at this time of night. 15 minutes after I leave my studio, I'm ready to turn onto the entrance ramp. A police cruiser rolls by going the opposite way. We both have our windows open. It's a beautiful night, so we see one another quite clearly as we pass, but he has no idea what has been put into motion. It's too late, I think. You guys are fucked. Windows open, I accelerate down the entrance ramp and done. I am fortifying the road to the safe haven during the floods. Interstate 90 will take me through Pennsylvania into western and central New York, and then finally Massachusetts, where it is an additional 200 miles to reach the ferry to the vineyard. The entire trip is almost 700 miles.
I want to stop just to put this up for people with the narratives. You can see that in each of our autobiographies, in each of our narratives, we all have had experiences with these creation stories, with new birth, new society, death. I thought I was dead, actually at one point in the narrative. So I think I'm the only one that experienced that. But this cosmic conflict, this new society, this kind of both religious and political cycling or upheaval. You know, what was amazing to me, and I don't know if you heard it, if you see the themes. First of all, I hadn't read von Franz when I did this narrative, so my little DJH Hallie thing was that was a surprise that was there. Kind of, yeah, there is something. So the point is, the issue of time is really remarkable in this whole experience, which is why I was talking about objective psyche and this very impersonal imposition on self. I did this in 2006. I don't, not everybody is an American here, but there's a lot about Black culture and the rise of or a coup that is meant to take place where Black culture overcomes the white culture. And the police, you heard me say, you're fucked, was because they were like the Nazi art. It was very Germanic, racial Nazis. The Democrats actually took control of the House of Representatives and Senate for the first time in 2006. But then, and Obama did get elected, but then obviously things kind of shifted again. In 2012, Black Lives Matter was rising, and the alt-right was also rising in the United States. There was a shooting of Trayvon Martin, and it got everything going with the organizers. And then, then we've entered our Trump era and our nationalism, our new connection to nationalism era. So I really wonder at times how this replication happens. Not that I'm it's remarkable to me that's where I went. The other thing maybe you noticed was when I was at the coffee shop, I was noticing the transgender aspects of the people there. And, that came to be much later as well. The gender fluidities really come up to the forefront in these past decades. There's a piece of environmentalism that I experienced, and also Antoine Boyson experienced, that John Weir Perry talks about extensively with one of his patients, who he felt like she was just doing this kind of wacky reorganization principle about the environment, and he was trying to psychoanalyze it in a way that made it kind of symbolic of her internal struggle. And then he realized that what she was quoting was actually a part of a passage, biblical passage about the environment and taking control. So there's this environmentalism aspect of things as well. And that's where the kind of the radio station or the transformer station section comes through, because there's a way in which I mean, the theory is that we are channeling or we are experiencing our own material as part of a reintegration, a reorganization, something that individuation is demanding of us. And I do think that in these psychotic periods, that there is something else happening, so that when we try to relegate it to someone's internal reorganization, a healing of personal trauma, of the personal unconscious, then we're missing the totality of the objective psyche, where we could be a part of a collective healing. You know, Jung's notion of an anti-adromia is really big in this type of thing, which I know we have to stop. But his definition of an anti-adromia, the idea of eschatology, of how the beginnings and the ends happen constantly, that the balance moves back and forth. Even John Custance, in his experience in mania and psychosis, and actually Maura Coate as well, it's like the whole history of the world unfolded for them. Custance called it his theory of actuality. And so a lot of this is in the book. And I want to thank you guys for sticking with me, as this is the first time I've tried to put this material together in this way. So we didn't get quite as far as I had hoped, but I do hope that you at least have some feel for the idea that the objective psyche is moving through the individual psyche in times of psychosis. So I hope that at least came through.
Thank you so much, Hallie. I mean, I think we can open it if someone wants to stay and ask a question. But before that, I just want to thank you. I mean, this was incredibly moving, thought-provoking, stimulating, and it's such a monumental task to bridge the experience with our theoretical framework. So that is, thank you for that. I think we're all privileged to be here. So those who want to stay and ask something can, but let's yeah. So there was a comment by Priscilla. I don't know if she's still here on the chat. Do you want to make it? Do you want to? I can read it, or you can just go ahead.
I'll say, I just unmuted myself. Let me look what I wrote. Gosh, I have so much I could say. I'll read the chat for a minute, but I want to say a couple things first. I'm grateful that you talk about the neurobiological piece and sort of stand behind that. You know, there's a whole story, I think, of you know, your Jungian analyst and, you know, thinking maybe you're thinking or her suggesting you sit at the bottom of a tree and all of that. And, you know, I have some skin in this game, not for myself, but a couple of my kids that have been really harmed probably by my own not realizing what was going on. And so I just want to throw that out. But what I wrote in the chat, and it doesn't so much apply to you specifically, but some of the people that you were quoting. First of all, I don't necessarily agree with the way the whole Jungian thing gets framed in terms of objective psyche. And I think the theory is really undeveloped in a lot of ways. And there's a lot of work that could be done. But I do, let me read my what I wrote in chat if I can find it.
I can read it to you if you want to.
It's okay, I just see it. I'm curious about the seeming conflation of psychosis with mystical unitive states or experiences of luminosity. And you were quoting people, you know, from the various books that you read around that, but do you have anything to say about that?
Well, I do have a couple of things, one of which is to back up. You bring up such an important point. You feel some of this stuff feels unfinished, and it actually is unfinished because Jung died before before pharmaceuticals came into practice. And he was right at this transition, and he really was ahead of the game, to be honest. He was one of the first, way back in the early 1900s, he intuited that there was a biological aspect to certain disorders like schizophrenia. And as we move through his life, he's still looking for what that chemical connection is. And he was very connected to the field of psychiatry. And all of the scientific advances that happened very close to when he was dying. And so DNA had just been discovered. I mean, EEGs had just been created. Pharmacology was in its infancy. And sometimes I'm a bit frustrated because there is a dialogue in the post-Jungian community that says, if he were alive today, his theories would never have held up. And that's absolutely, as far as neuroscience and as far as severe mental illnesses go, that's incorrect. It's just flat out incorrect. Now, I think the numinosity piece is a tough one because I think what I hear is that you feel as though it's being glorified, perhaps, and it's quite a painful place to be. So I might have missed your perspective then with the spiritual aspect. I can't get away from the fact that there is, even for me. Well, I remember when I was trying to decide if I would go off of my medication, I thought, there's something inherently wrong with a diagnosis that pathologizes a belief in God. And so I'm not sure we have time for me to learn, your unique perspective or what you want to contribute about that. But it's like that original quote that I started with about archetype. It's the mana, it's daimon, it's God, whatever unfolds or pops out. I think that's part of what the numinosity is talking about, this revelation, I would say. So I'm so sorry. Yeah, it's a big topic.
It's a big topic, but maybe somebody else would like to jump in, and maybe I'm taking us down a huge rabbit hole.
Yeah, no, it's not. And I don't read the texts because I'm not I don't multitask very well, but I've got them open here. And I have to tell you, I'm more than willing to do classes. I mean, it's a big topic. I love teaching it. I'm so glad that at least, Priscilla, the honoring of the biological aspect of things and then the holding on to that came through, because it's one of the most important things to me. So yeah, I'm gonna read things after you guys go, and just
what I would also suggest for those that are still here that have interest is we can also follow the discussion in the group, in the listserv. So if anybody wants to raise something that came up, it can be raised there and you can respond. And because I think that in many ways what happened was that you opened up like 10 different avenues, and a lot of people are sort of curious. So pursuing that and maybe eventually doing another seminar might be interesting. So,
and I did write a book that has everything in
exactly.
But I'm more than happy to. This is really a passion of mine. So thank you guys so much. And
thank you so much, Hallie.
Really honored. Thank you.
Thank you. I own your book.
Thank you, everybody.
I haven't read it yet, but I will now.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
I'll stick with you for a minute if you don't mind, Gustavo.
I don't know if Dragana is here. I am going to, wait, let me first stop the recording.